Hello dear Polymer Clay enthusiast, I'm Michaela from Learn Polymer Clay, and in today's tutorial I want to show you how you can use polymer clay, beads, wire to embellish metal objects. In my case, I'm embellishing a hairpin because I'm working with the Chinese Asian inspired theme. I'm working with white polymer clay that I have previously conditioned, of course, and I passed the polymer clay through the setting number 7 of my Atlas Best Machine because I want a sheet of polymer clay that is very thin. I used a petal shaped cutter and I cut a number of pieces, but I cut more than necessary to have something extra to work with. And then I've used the 24 gauge craft wire in gold color to make a bracing system. So I'm putting the wire around the same petal shaped cutter, and then I just twisted the two ends of the wire. Then I took a thin petal, and then I've tweaked a little bit. I pressed a little bit the wire frame to make it a little bit smaller because I wanted to be hidden inside the clay. Then I cut out a rather small length of 19 or 20 gauge wire in gold color, and I put this in the middle of the leaf of the petal, and then I put a second petal on top and I pressed everything together. Then I used my sculpting tool to make a vein-like pattern. You can use a dotting tool, you can use a toothpick to make such a vein-like pattern. And I've made a number of petals. Finally, I decided to use two on each side because I don't want it to end up with a design which had too many elements, because I intended to use wire and beads to embellish the hairpin. And for my trial piece, I've wrapped the wire around the hairpin and I pressed the clay into the base, and I think I should have done this for all the petals because it was easier to attach them if I pressed the clay into the base. I've used some white polymer clay passed through the setting number 3 of my Atlas pasta machine, and the cutter and the 4 petal cutter, cookie cutter. I've just used the cutter to cut out the floral shape. Then I put it in the middle of the palm, and I'm using my round ball tool, and I'm pressing it in the middle of the flower because I want it to shape outwards to have a 3D design. Of course, you'll have to use your tools and smooth off the edges. I wanted to show you that if you don't want to make flowers from start to end, you can always use cutters and make beautiful flowers from polymer clay. And then I'm going to use mica powders. I'm going to use pinkish pink. I'm going to use pink mica powder and lavender purple mica powder, and I'm going to use brushes, and for the flower I'm going to use pink to color the center and the bottom part of the petals, and I will finish by applying purple on the rest of the flower, and I decided to apply some purple mica powder on the back as well. And I am going to use these colors to color the petals as well. You might need to shape a little bit the flower before putting it into the oven, and you should use the brush and color the margins of the flower as well. So I intend to place this in the middle, and initially I wanted to put a natural gray pearl in the middle of the flower, but then I decided to use white glass pearl beads. So for the petal shaped elements, I've used the pink mica powder, and I've colored the contour of the petal, and in the middle I've applied purple mica powder, and also on the back I applied purple mica powder on the back, and this is for, I've done this for 2 of the petals. And for the other 2 I decided to use pink to color the base of the petal, and I finished by applying purple on the rest of the petal and on the back as well. In fact, I'm using mica powders, and I intend to apply resin on top because I want to have a faux enamel effect for these pieces and for the flower as well. So then you'll have to bake your pieces for 40 minutes in the preheated oven. I bake my pieces on parchment paper. I tend them with an aluminum disposable pan. I let the clay cool down, and then I used the brush and I applied a rather thin layer of UV resin on top of the flower and on top of the petals. And then I used my UV lamp and I cured them for 2 minutes. You will have to cure them for 1-2 minutes. Then I used a beautiful white glass pearl that I put in the center of the flower, and in fact I passed 24 gauge gold color wire through the bead, and then I used the fingers from my left hand to keep the bead in place, while I've used my right hand to twist the 2 ends of the wire. And then I put these twisted ends through the flower, and of course you'll have to use a drilling tool and poke a hole. And then I just wrapped this twisted wire around the metal elements of the hairpin. I used my round nose pliers to put the wire through the openings of the hairpin, and you'll just have to wrap this around the metal elements. Normally, even twisted, this wire is rather thin, so you don't notice it a lot. It looks nice from the back. And I finished by wrapping this twisted wire around the flower, but you could just twist it around the metal base and then use your flush cutters and trim off the excess wire. Use the flat nose pliers to trim off, to tuck in the end of the wire. To attach the petal elements, I used the round nose pliers. I've made a loop rather close to the area where the petal element starts. Then I put this loop through the metal element. I used the end of the wire that I twisted around the base to attach this element, but as you can see, this element as it is right now dangles a lot left and right, up and down. So I decided to use again a thin metal wire, and I wrap this wire around the metal base and then around this component, and I also decided to put a larger white glass pearl in between these elements, and this glass pearl would be in the same time a decorative element, but it would keep these elements in place. They would not move around so much, especially the second one. And it is also a beautiful embellishment. And again, I'm taking advantage of the fact that I'm working with the metal elements with a lot of openings, so I can put the wire through the openings and wrap the wire around those openings. I wrap the wire around the bead and around the petal elements. Then I decided to add more embellishments, and I used the thin wire, 24 gauge gold color wire, and the pearl bead. And again, I put the wire through the pearl bead, the glass pearl bead, and I kept the bead with my left hand while I twisted the ends of the wire with my right hand. And then I again wrapped this twisted wire around the metal component, the hairpin. Then I decided to add an element with several twisted branches, if I may say so. And again, I twisted the wire, keeping the element that I wanted to add with my left hand while twisting the wire. And then I added a second element and I twisted the wire, and I've used pearls and star crystal, purple crystal rhinestones to embellish the piece. And if you take a look at these kind of hairpins, which are jewelry pieces in my opinion, you will notice that they have beautiful dangle elements which add even more interest to the pieces. So I decided to use gold metal chain, and I've used jump rings to attach the gold metal chain to the central upper part of the hairpin. And on the other side, I've used two such metal chains. One is a little bit shorter than the other, and at the end of the shorter one I attached a star rhinestone, purple star crystal rhinestone, and at the end of the other metal chain I attached a beautiful crystal drop bead. And this is the finished design, and I hope that you like this interpretation of the Chinese beautiful Chinese hairpins, and the faux enamel look of the embellishments. Please tell me what you think about this idea. I can't wait to read your messages. Thank you, and stay tuned for more inspiration for work with polymer clay.